The following is a thought-provoking and fascinating conversation with Alvin Wang Graylin. Alvin is a respected corporate leader, entrepreneur, and technology pioneer. He has been HTC China president for years and continues to shape our immersive future as Global VP for Corporate Development at HTC. He has co-authored Our Next Reality with Louis Rosenberg, and in this book, he's telling us about AI and how AI is going to shape all of our future for the good, but also for the bad if we don't steer it into the right direction. So sit back and enjoy this interview. It is my great pleasure and honor to be here with Alvin Wang Graylin, the author of this book, Our Next Reality, and I can't wait to talk with you, Alvin, about this book. So, Alvin, first of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've been on the road the last 3 weeks, going around talking about the book and talking about what's going on with AI and XR. So it's actually been exciting because also we've been getting a lot of feedback from people who have read it and people who are interested in the topic. And I think so far everybody who have been exposed to it have come away being very positive. So, or at least about the message, but some of them are actually a little bit scared by the message. So,
Oh
which
yeah,
actually
oh
is kind
yeah.
of what we intended. So we I think it's important to balance a little bit of kind of excitement together with a little bit of fear so that we can induce people to take action because the timing is important the next few years. So.
And I think you have done that so well in the book. So this book, Our Next Reality, you can get it now from Amazon. So I got it from Amazon and I read it like in 2 days because it was so exciting. So the interesting part is it is like you wrote it together with Louis Rosenberg and you do have some kind of
Yes.
conflicting views sometimes, not all the times. And that makes for such an interesting read because you could see both sides of the medal, but we're going to get more into it. So, yeah, for everyone who has never heard about Our Next Reality, could you probably in one or two sentences just describe what this book is about?
Sure. It's essentially a debate between myself and Lewis about how the future is going to turn out in the next 5 to 10 years and how that's going to affect the long-term future of humanity and society. It starts out with a little bit more detailed on the technical side and goes into the industry side, and then it goes into more of geopolitics and the human condition, and economics as well. So it's essentially a way to solve some of the problems that we've seen in the market, where we see most books in this space are either super hype, it's talk about it's going to be utopia everywhere, or it's going to be super doomer that says we're all going to be you know killed by robots, and the reality is never that extreme. So what we wanted to do is to show both
Okay.
sides, let people get all the information, and then make up their own minds based on what available research is already showing. And a lot of we put in a lot of data from papers and books from all over the world, so that people can actually see fact-driven information.
All right. So yeah, the next 5 to 10 years, and actually also beyond that, and we will talk
Yes.
about that as well. This was especially interesting for me, so we will talk about this. Let's start a bit with VR. What was more exciting for you, putting on the HTC Vive here in Taipei in 2015, or was it when you first put on the first VR headset in Washington at your university?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably would be the 91 experience just because it was completely novel. And
Okay.
what I was able to put on device there that was essentially top of the line at the time, which several $100,000 device, and powered by a very high-end silicon graphics workstation that very few people can afford. So to be exposed to essentially 6 off VR experience back in 91 and have full hand control and hand tracking,
Oh,
that
wow.
that was something that was transformative. And even though the resolution was crap, I think it was like 200 by 300 or 300 by 400 or something like that. And the frame rate was very low, probably 10 or 20 frames per second. But you can see where it was going, and you can see that wow, now I'm actually in this world, and I can have presence in there. And this is a new medium that is going to come down and be accessible to a wider audience soon. And I thought it was going to be within 10 years. I was, wrong by a couple of decades. I think,
Right, right.
the progress of Pixar. I mean, we have devices like this that is very accessible and affordable, and it's only going to get better and cheaper. So, what I saw in 2015 at HTC was also very exciting, but that really kind of solidified my belief in the space because it took what I had done, 20 something years before that, but then it made it even more affordable. Instead of hundreds of $1,000s, it became hundreds of dollars, and and it was full body tracking. It was full 6 dot, full room scale. So it really took what was initially foreseen for me, 30, 20 something years before that, and made it real. And so the two in combination really solidified my confidence in this space.
Okay, wow. Interesting that in 1991 it was already sixed off. That is really surprising. That must have been really an incredible experience then. So I was blown away when I saw the first HTC Vive, and I thought like, okay, this is going to be so big. I must make this my profession, and yeah, here we are. But well, having seen this in 1991 is incredible. So now, what fascinates me about this book is how it first teaches you about AI. So, well, I'm obviously using AI and I'm fascinated by it, but I don't have this deep understanding about it. Now, with the book, it really helped me to understand much more about AI. Like, what does it mean? What does AGI mean? What does ASI mean? What is the fast takeoff and all this stuff that we're going to touch on? So, I want to know, did you have some kind of realization for AI just similar to the one that you had in 1991 when you first put on the VR headset, when you knew, oh, wow, this is going to be big? Did you have this kind of realization what a huge impact AI will have on the future? Was there like an aha moment comparable when you put on the Vive or the first headset?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that the AI concept has been part of, sci-fi books and legends for probably 100 years. And so I think the potential of intelligent, all-knowing type of technology is something that we can all see the value of. But, even when I first studied it, actually also in 91, 92, I was doing neural network for natural language processing. Um, then it didn't have that visceral feel that the XR did, because you could see the value of it, but you could also see all the flaws that it had, all the limitations that it had. And it wasn't clear when it would actually be something that would be daily usable. Now, over the last 20 years, you can definitely see that, or 30 years, you can definitely see that things have progressed, and gradually things are getting, in 2005, when I created the first natural language search system in China, essentially kind of what Bing Chat, or kind of actually a little bit like what ChatGPT is today. We were doing uh, queries where people put in natural language. They would send a text message into the system, and it would come back with an
Yeah.
answer. It wouldn't come back with a link,
Wow.
but it would actually give you an answer. And if it doesn't clear, it would actually come back and say, well, do you mean A, B, or C? Or, what are the specifics of this
Wow.
requirements of your question? So it was able to create conversational dialogue back in 2005. And that system I deployed with China Mobile, with China Unicom, and China Telecom. So all three Chinese carriers were using it. They were using it to replace their customer support staff. So they actually kind of, I think about 30% of their support staff was replaced by the system. So, I mean, so you can see even back then there was
Wow.
displacement issues. Nobody talked about it. But so
We're going
yeah,
to get
so
to
so
that
I
very
can
soon.
definitely see the value. But I think over the last probably 8, 9 years, really since the deep learning took off, you could really see now, oh, I think there's something
Mhm.
that actually is going to give you the way to where we are going next. Right? So where we see essentially on a weekly basis, you're seeing breakthroughs in the AI space, and things that you think would take years to get solved would get solved in weeks or months, and it's only getting faster. So the speed of evolution over the last few years really gives me confidence that we are getting closer and closer to having some form of AGI. And in some ways, people were saying that GPT-4 in some ways is already an AGI in the sense of it's got general knowledge on a lot of different topics. Unlike the past ones, you can only play chess or you can only play Jeopardy or something. So those type of limited capabilities um, could, couldn't do anything else. But now you have a system that can, code, that can make videos, that can, create poetry, create pictures, answer questions, be your tutor, be your lawyer, be your doctor. In fact, I last year I had a surgery for a hernia, and
Yeah.
I diagnosed it with AI because I had this lump in my abdomen. I was like, "What is this?" And I asked the three different AI chatbots,
Yeah.
and I said, "What is this? Here are the symptoms." And they actually said, "No, here are the potential two things." And then I said, "Oh," and then when I lie down, the lump goes away because then it's very likely a hernia. And I said, "Well, is this something urgent? Do I need to go to the doctor right now?" Some people actually choose not to. But if you have a chance, you probably should, and go see a doctor for more advice. So, in some ways,
Okay.
it made me more relieved because at least I knew what it was. I knew that it wasn't life threatening, and I knew whether or not I should be taking this flight that I had tomorrow. Should I cancel this flight and go to a doctor, or
Right.
should I wait? And I decided to wait. So in some ways, I think AI is much more capable than a lot of people give it credit for, and it is not the kind of stochastic parrot that a lot of people think it is today.
So I also agree with you that it's so fascinating what these models can achieve and also create, like in terms of, yeah, like it can make pictures, 3D worlds, and so on. And this is also part of your book, like how they work, how AI and XR work together. And one of the first chapters is about virtual worlds, and this is like the obvious thing, and that's why I'm putting it in the beginning of our talk. Virtual worlds will be created with the help of AI at a much faster pace, obviously. Right now, the Horizon and so on and so forth, they are made by humans and they are building it with design tools, and each world takes forever to make. Now, we can have it like with simply a sentence. Make me a nighttime Tokyo, right? And well, it's going to happen. It's crazy. So, in your book, you say like, okay, those worlds which are currently like there's nobody in it. Basically, when you go inside, they will be probably full of AI agents that live there and that would talk with you, and it will make it much more interesting than right now. What do you believe? How long will it take from now until it feels, when I go into one of these worlds, it feels as if I go out now here into the night market in Taipei?
I mean, I think within the end of this decade for sure. So, exactly when,
Okay, yeah.
it's hard to say. But within the next 5, 6 years, I think we are going to get there. Especially if you look at the pace of accelerated improvements in all related technologies and the amount of uh, compute that's being dedicated into this space. And once you do get that kind of capability, people will be drawn to using it because nobody wants to go into
Right.
a virtual ghost town. But if you go into a ghost town or if you go into a virtual world where every single character in there has some level of intelligence, whether they're populated by real people or populated by virtual agents, um, it will be an interesting conversation because those people will have history, will have personality, will have understanding of things that you don't know. Just like when you go on the street today and you meet somebody and you chat with them, there's a conversation there. There's a story there to be had. And I think it's very doable from a technology perspective to enable every single of these virtual agents to have backstories, to have cultural backgrounds, and to have a knowledge of the world that is similar to humans, if not better, because they can be a much more
Mhm.
complete view of what the world is. And of course, because of that, you'll attract a lot more humans into it. Then you actually have a combination of real and virtual humans. So you never go into a ghost town. Whereas today, most of the metaverse worlds that you go into are definitely not something that you want to stay in because there just isn't enough there to attract you there.
Right, right. It's gonna be so exciting actually to go inside if it just feels like the real world. Yeah, just like you said, it was gonna draw more real people, and yeah, probably some people will not want to leave these virtual worlds, right? I believe once it's gonna
Yeah, I
be
mean, so
so
like
good.
yesterday, we actually had a panel here at South by, and one of the questions people were asking was, will people just escape into there and never come out?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, as you know, in the book, we actually have a section talking about potential addictiveness of these technologies, and at least the initial data that we saw from the reports are showing it is somewhere around twice as addictive in terms of the qualities of addiction. Of course, we also talk about the mitigation strategies. There are multiple mitigation strategies that can help reduce this addictive nature. Now, in some ways, addiction sounds like a very bad thing, but if you depends on what content you're looking at. If you're looking at educational content and you have kids who want to spend, 8 hours learning amazing about things about science, about history, about philosophy, and they can do it in an interactive way and they learn faster and better, remember more, that addictive nature is actually serving good. If they're just playing, random brainless games, then maybe it's bad, right? So it is partly up to us as parents to make sure that children are educated in terms of how to manage themselves, but also as part of the industry, that there should be some guardrails in the system to allow parents to be able to control the amount of time that their children spend, just like we do today with iPads and computers. You can actually put time limits on terms of usage. So I think it is something that is manageable. But overall, I think the good outweighs the bad. But all technologies are double-edged swords as we talk about in
Yeah,
the book.
right, right. So it's so interesting that you also very clearly show what kind of bad things could happen, right? It's not just, oh, everything is great and wow, the metaverse together with AI is going to be that paradise. No, not at all. So one thing that I thought was a bit scary and that really is thought provoking is is like the marketing side. How they're going to most probably what's going to happen and how the system or systems which are not really have our best thoughts at heart, how they could use this technology. And one thing is this closed feedback loop where like the AI powered metaverse marketing, where they check your feelings. Obviously, they can, right? Because they know your heartbeat and where you're looking at and your facial reactions to something where they use your reaction towards some stimulus. I don't know, some random talk of some people who are walking by the streets, but this random talk actually is made to sell you something or to make you feel something about some product, for example, right? And everything is made up by the AI. And according to your feeling, they will change that kind of talk or marketing message or pull you into that kind of talk by making some avatars that attract you, right? So I see lots of beautiful women in my metaverse walking around. So, so that sounds funny, but it is quite scary.
So I think what you're saying is definitely a valid concern. Something that we particularly highlighted in the book is the fact that if we go into a long-term metaverse that is advertising driven, natural forces will push us into or push the systems and the platforms into utilizing the biometrics and personal data in a much more manipulative way and convincing way than even today with social networks, which can be detrimental if the purpose of that influence is used to force you to buy things or to make you do something that is not great for society or for yourself. Um, I think that we talk quite a bit about the need for proper regulation so that the data that you have some more control over it. I think Europe's already starting to do a lot of those things with their rules, which I think could be an example for the rest of the world. I think that the longer term solution is actually that we need to get away from advertising driven business for the metaverse, where today for the internet, it is a core part of the revenue model. But if we if we actually start to think
Mm.
about this, right, later on, we're going to have agents, AI agents that will working for us in terms of going, and let's say if I want to shop, rather than looking at advertising and having, 10 impressions that influence me to then have an affinity to a brand to then buy something, what probably makes more sense is I tell my agent, it's like, okay, I need some, toothpaste. Can you get me the best quality toothpaste at the best price and have it to me tomorrow? And they would just go out and find the right solution for me. And essentially it bypasses advertising. Right. This is, in fact, if you think about why did Google wait so long to release its AI system and let OpenAI
Mhm.
release it first, is because they didn't want to release it because if they released it, it cannibalizes their advertising model, right? And once OpenAI did it, they didn't have a choice, so they had to release their model. The transformer
All right, you're right.
architecture was
Yeah.
actually invented by Google, by a team at Google, and they released it, and that's what OpenAI used for their system. In fact, all the current
Okay.
uh, frontier
Okay.
models are all using the same architecture, right, with some minor adjustments. So I think that they can definitely see the writing on the wall there. So in a way, so I'm actually less worried about the sales type of advertising. The part I'm worried about is maybe the influence in
Uh-huh.
terms of um, affecting social trends, affecting voting, affecting things where it has societal and societal values. Uh, those are the kind of things that a bad actor, if
Right.
they had access to the technology, could utilize to influence us in a negative way. Additionally, our employers or governments could also use this to influence us in terms of indoctrinating us with different ideas or philosophies. Now, so these are the kind of things that governments, at least I think it'll be hard for them to manage themselves in terms of at least government ideals or policies, but in terms of companies influencing us, I think that's something that the governments can put in place. Now, what I would also like to see happen is that we have kind of like we do today with antivirus. If a virus goes on the computer, it tells you, oh, I've detected a virus. Do you want me to remove it, or do you want to, put it into a quarantine or whatever? So it should be the same thing where I have an agent that is working for me, detecting these AI messages that is trying to influence me, and they will say, "Oh, you just got this message from this avatar. This avatar is actually not a real person. He's trying to make you do this. Do you want to do it, or would you like me to block this avatar for you?" So I think we will need to have these type of anti-AI manipulation tools, just like we have today with anti-denial service and antivirus. So there will be an industry that will come up that will help to handle some of this,
Mhm.
and we do discuss that again in later part of the book when we talk about security and privacy.
Okay. Okay. I want to get back to one point that I thought is very interesting that you said. You said like we should go away from this advertising model, right? But do you really believe that companies like Meta or Google can actually do that? Especially when they see what can be done. I mean, they obviously know what can be done if most people spend most of the times in the metaverse, and then they would have the chance to really understand all the data of a person, where they look at, what's their heartbeat, and so on and so forth. So it's just like it feels like so hard for them to not take this beautiful apple of metaverse advertising. You know, it's just like so
Yeah,
juicy.
for sure.
They will bite into it. Or,
Yeah, so I think that in the early parts of the development of these platforms, I completely agree with you. They will be very, very tempted to use this because it is the
yeah,
holy grail of advertising. But I
really.
think at the end of the day, it then goes back to who's paying for it. Right? So if we find that this advertising is not needed because my agent's already going out and buying the best product, then the advertisers will no longer utilize this technology. Like we have ad blockers today, we will likely start to have ad
Mhm.
blockers for these AI advertising, and the functionality, capabilities, and the influence of those systems will go down. So I'm actually less worried long term. I think in the near term, before we have some of these tools to work on our interests, there will be significant kind of profits to be gotten. But then I think once things become apparent in terms of to the government how this data is, could be misused, regulations will come down. And again, a lot of that is already being discussed. And then also, as you know, in the later part of the we actually go into a kind of a post-scarcity society, enabled by
Yeah,
AI.
yeah. I will get back to that very soon. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Abundantism. That was so exciting to read.
yeah, because if we do get to that type of a society, then that the need to create revenues and profits become almost a moot point. And if that's the case, then natural forces will then go against us,
Okay.
fluttering
I
our
honestly,
views.
I don't think that you and me are going to see that world. That is just too far away, I think.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, but
keep going.
yeah, yeah, I was just still thinking about the advertising. It's not just about searching, in my opinion, because the metaverse is not just going to be that complete virtual world, but it's all the world around us when we wear these AR headsets, right? And some stuff is augmented about us. And then let's say I walk out here with these glasses, and I see some car, and it detects that my heartbeat is going stronger if I see this car, and then boom, Google shows me, yes, this is the new Tesla Roadster. Click it now. So this is the holy grail of this advertising. And it's not just about search, I think,
Well, no,
right? The whole world is going to be a huge billboard.
yeah. I mean, so the funny thing, do you remember there's a little video that went around a few years ago called Hyper Reality? It's where this guy goes outside and
Yeah,
everything is a
yeah.
billboard.
You mentioned it in the book
Yeah,
as well. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I
And
know
so
exactly,
so
exactly.
actually yesterday was at South by, and we were having drinks, and the guy right next to me was the guy who actually made that video, and we were chatting about it. So I think that
Cool.
that world, um, probably we won't see that type of a world, because that kind of a world is something that the most people don't want to see, and there will be a backlash. If we start having
Mhm,
going outside and our glasses shows us, 100 different billboards and signs, it's actually emotionally
mhm.
stressful for humans to be in that type of environment. And people will push back on it. And if people push back on it, they will go to the platforms. They'll say, "Oh, I'd rather just pay $5 a month. I'd rather just pay $10 a month and have a completely, ad-free
Okay,
environment." So I don't know if you remember, there was a
right.
section by Philip Rosedale who founded Second Life, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I like that part.
he
Yes.
talked about that, in Second Life right now, there is no advertising. They don't do advertising model. It's all based on a membership model and a currency model. And people actually do some, trade and purchase, but they don't advertise, and they've never done advertising. And it's actually on a per dollar basis or per user basis. They get more revenue per user than Facebook is. And so from that perspective, I think it's actually not, it gets obvious that or inevitable that we will continue to expand the advertising model long term. So, anyways, but I think if where people are interested,
Okay.
please read the book. We have a lot more discussion and details in there.
Yeah, yeah. That's exactly. Like I can only like scratch the surface right now. So I'm happy that I can ask you some questions about the book. And people out there, please go and get it. It's amazing. So let's talk about another fascinating part of it, and it's about healthcare. And once I read it, it made so much sense that obviously we're not going to talk to the doctors and tell them all the stories like, oh, I went there and suddenly my leg hurt or what. Because really, like AI agents can do the same job just as well. And they have like all the knowledge of all the doctors that have ever
Mhm.
been there, and they will tell us something that makes sense. And then a real doctor, like a human doctor, can check up on that and see if it makes sense. However, my question is, what about the human connection? Isn't it like, wouldn't it be sad if only like computers or AI will do all of this healthcare stuff? And what about the human nurse that feels your pain and will comfort you? Is it something that just we will miss because we know it, or do you think the next generations for them it will be so normal that yeah, like AI and robots
Yeah,
will take
I
care
think
of them.
for the kind of higher income class, they will probably still longer term continue to prefer have some level of human interactions. But because of if using AI systems, your
Uh-huh.
cost can go down by 100x. Instead of paying thousands and thousands of dollars to go make a doctor visit, you can do it for free or for a few cents. Most people will probably
Mhm.
prefer to save the cost and actually have much faster result. Because if you make an appointment with a doctor, it could be months. Like my mom was trying to get a doctor to make a eye surgery for her, and then she had to wait 3 months to do it, right? So if things like this can be done, or at
Wow, yeah.
least that the exploration and analysis part can be done very quickly, I think the human contact may not be as big of a point. Now, they actually recently did a study, and they had a human that was interacting with patients, and they had AI that was interacting with patients, and the feedback was actually the humans, the patients preferred the interactions with the AI because they thought the AI was actually more friendly and more
Yeah.
understanding and more patient than the human doctors. Yes,
More
yeah,
patient. Yeah,
because
that makes sense.
yeah,
That makes sense
if you're
actually,
a
right? Yeah.
doctor and you're
Yeah.
seeing 50 patients a day, and each one has these life-threatening problems, and it gets very stressful, and you start to what
Right.
seems very important to them to you becomes
And
routine,
routine.
right? And
Yeah.
you lose that
It's
the
routine. It
context.
is.
So I don't think you necessarily lose a lot in terms of the human side, especially if you can have an embodied agent that whether it's a virtual embodied agent or it's a physical embodied agent that allows you to get a sense of
Mhm.
having a person listen to you. So our brains are pretty plastic, and we adapt to the environment, and we uh, insert a personification of whatever we see anyways. So even if it's a virtual agent talking to you, if it's behaving nice, if it's being patient, if it's being knowledgeable, and it's being helpful, you then put that personified personality to that agent, right? Especially if that agent knows that, okay, you prefer a British accent,
Mhm.
or you prefer the female voice, or you prefer the higher voice. And they can actually give you the voice and the speed you like and the accent you like, then and
Right.
giving the virtual the nonverbal signals of a human face to you. So you actually do feel like you're being heard. You feel like you're being cared for. So I don't know how much most people will
Right.
miss it. But again, for the high net worth class who don't care about the cost savings and can get immediate service because they can pay a lot more to get that
Hmm.
immediate service, they will probably
You're
go
right.
towards the human
But but y-
figures.
but you're so right. I even didn't think about the cost factor that it's going to be so much cheaper. I know, especially in the US, like healthcare is like so expensive that some people
Yes, yes.
don't go to the doctor if something's wrong, right? And
Mhm.
this could completely change it. It makes so much sense. And also the waiting times. If you need to see some specialist, it also in Germany where we have like a very affordable healthcare, you also have to wait. And wow, this can go down a lot. And this is actually a very exciting business model. There's so many new businesses. There's so many new businesses coming up, right? With AI, it's like mind blowing. I love it. It's just such an exciting time right now. It is crazy. Cool, cool. Yeah. So healthcare, yeah, it will be completely revolutionized. It makes sense, right? It's so many f- areas will completely change and go away. But we're going to talk about that problem in a moment too, where we're going to discuss if my job is still safe. But anyways, so healthcare is an interesting part. And what's cool about your book, you go through so many different topics that we even cannot touch on in this talk. That's why I'm jumping from one topic to another topic, just to make people understand like how much is in it, and just the most exciting parts. I found some questions. No, no, I want to ask questions, and therefore I want to go to the next topic, which is a bit controversial, or like it's a hot topic. and that is like privacy. You know, privacy is like an incredibly hot topic. How much privacy are we okay to give away to get something else for it? Like to be more safe, to have a safer environment, for example. And actually, I was surprised that you argue in your book that you say, like, you know what? Forget about privacy. We have given up our privacy long time ago, but you don't know it. Could you please elaborate on that part?
Well, I mean, I think most people realize it, but they don't want to admit it. But essentially, if you're using
Uh,
a cell phone, if you're using, a smartwatch or a smart ring or whatever, your information is being, given to that provider. If you're using a credit card, that information is being stored and being distributed to a lot of providers, right? If you have essentially, frequent flyer mile credits with your airlines, that information is being tracked. So essentially, where you go, what you do, who you're with, what you say,
right.
it's all in some database somewhere. Right?
Uh,
Now, you may say, oh, but they're all being separated in different places. But honestly, if you have a
mhm.
phone next to you, you pretty much know more about people can know more about you from the information on your phone than probably talking to your best friend. Right. And so,
Okay.
and that not to mention that governments have backdoors into all this information, right? And not just
Oh,
authoritarian governments, but actually the U.S. is known to have a lot of back end data on a lot of its
yeah.
population,
I
and
just
yeah.
we heard about it from Snowden. Yeah.
Yeah, and many other people. So at the end of the
Yeah. Of
day,
course.
the fact that people think that they have privacy, it makes them feel good. But the reality is that unless you're, somebody who is living in the middle of the woods with no internet, with no device, with buying everything by cash, your information's out there, right? And if you're in a place like China where there's 6,000 cameras for every single kilometer of space,
Yeah.
there's even more
That's
information
crazy.
being, same with actually
Yeah.
London has about the same number
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
cameras per per
Right.
square kilometer. So privacy is not it's not as abundant as we think it is. So I'll just say that.
Right. Okay. 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 That makes sense. But and then you're saying like you in the book it feels like you would believe it's a good idea to tie your ID, your phone number to your metaverse ID. Something that's happening in China, right? If you want to make an account on Weibo or whatever, you would need to do that,
Yes.
right? But then I think like in the metaverse where they can really check everything that you do, like everywhere, every movement, every look, everything is being controlled. Isn't that like too much if the government knows everything? And won't the governments of our world make use of this? And I'm not even talking about China. I'm also thinking about the Five Eyes, like US and so on and so forth. Isn't it like too much power to the government that they want to bite in, just like the temptation of the marketing? Like it's the same thing. It's just so much power.
Well, the reality is that we already have that unique phone number. No matter anywhere in the world, you can be accessed by your phone number, right? So there's something like 7 or 8 billion phone numbers
Mhm.
in the world today that are active phone numbers. So almost everybody in the world is already uniquely identified. And if they have that information, they know where you are, they know who you're with, they know what you're talking to, right? So again, I think
Okay.
it's not
Okay.
that much different. The big difference is right now the telecom network globally is integrated, but the metaverse solutions and systems and proto worlds out there are not, and every single one is completely vertically a silo model. And if that's the case, then the value they provide to you is very limited. But if I can say, hey, I have a single ID, just use my phone number, and I can log into every single world on the internet, every single metaverse world, and I can carry my avatar with me, my
Mhm.
identity, my face, my profile, and so I don't have to register every time I go to one of these places. That actually makes this
Sure.
type of a world functional. Whereas today, if you go to Roblox or Fortnite or Rec Room or VR Chat or
You're right.
whatever,
Sure.
Decentraland, none of them have integrated IDs. And so you're very unlikely to jump between. You're either going to use one or the other, and then there's just not enough there, so you don't want to spend that much time in it. And so I think it is the natural forces of Metcalfe's law will bring us to a point where we will integrate these disparate metaverse proto worlds into an integrated network of interoperable worlds. It will take time, and it may happen again between regions at different periods. But it is a kind of a trend, a natural trend that will drive to it. Just like back when the internet started, back in the early '90s, we had AOL and CompuServe and Prodigy, and they were all vertically integrated worlds. But over time, they all were replaced by the web, which is a much more open world that you can jump between any of the worlds with just a URL. And so, just like right now, we have an email address that we can actually use an email address and send to anybody on any device anywhere in the world, right? So we will have essentially we've already have some of these universal IDs. We're just not using them seamlessly between these 3D platforms. And so that's what I'm advocating. I'm not saying we need to give up everything and give it all to the government. Most of this stuff the government already has it. They want to see it. Um, and the fact that
Okay.
having a unified ID also gives you another secondary benefit is that people will be more decent because if they do bad things, like right now, if you go on a social blog post network and you flame somebody and say bad things, there's no ramification, right? Because you're anonymous. And so people are very willing to behave very poorly. Whereas if it's tied to your name, you're going to probably think twice, like, do I really want to say this thing that is, either racist or bigot or bigotry or whatever, that is bad for society, when it ties back to you as an individual. So this actually may create more harmony in a larger integrated metaverse type of a society.
Yeah, but then you also must know, okay, who says what is good for the society, right? Like, okay, in China, the government would say, okay, this is good for society, but if you do this, then that is bad for society, So it's really about, like, who do you trust with this decision? What is good or what is bad for society? Like, I totally agree with you. Like, okay, it's great to have open standards where we can interoperate. But do I really want to tell the controller of the metaverse where I do everything in my life exactly all the time where I am? It just feels a bit tough for my Western upbringing and my Western thinking. It feels like, no, I don't want to give up so much of my freedom, especially in this world where they can really check everything. I agree with you. I agree. They know my phone number and they know what I do and what I search for on Google. I totally agree with you. That is not a good thing. But I still could escape right now, right? I just leave my phone away and I could go into the woods. There's still a chance. There's still a chance in the real world that I could do something a bit anonymously, a bit freely. But in that metaverse, I don't think so. If I'm in the virtual woods, they will know.
Well, I mean, anything you do online actually is trackable, right? Even the people they talk about how
Right, right.
crypto is a anonymous system. It's actually the opposite. The crypto is a public chain. It's a
Yeah, I
public
agree.
blockchain.
They know
Every
everything.
if people have the right
Yeah,
tools,
exactly.
they can go back and
Exactly.
analyze and know exactly every single person, every single transaction
Absolutely.
back into the history of the beginning of that chain. So there is no anonymity.
Yes.
And I guess the other thing to think about is the longer once we have more of these sophisticated AI agents that are working on our behalf, we actually want to have it give it information. I want my virtual AI agent to know me as thoroughly as possible because then it can represent me. I can next time, in a few years, maybe we do this interview and it's your agent and my agent talking, and they're just answering based on what it thinks we would answer.
But that wouldn't be fun.
No, but I mean,
Yeah, no, you're
honestly,
right.
most of the meetings I go into or you go into, probably, you could only 5% of that meeting is useful, right? In terms of the time. If I can send my agent to do to
You're right,
handle the
right.
95%, and then it comes back and say, hey, Alvin, there's this new topic that just came up with the discussion. Here's the background. What would you
You're
like me to
right.
say? And then I can actually, yeah, I
It
can be a
makes so much
lot more
sense.
productive, and be spread out into multiple places than I am today, and spend time on things I really care about.
Wow.
But it has to know me. It has to know my view.
Oh, you didn't put that in the book. You should put that in the second edition. I
Okay,
love the
all right.
idea.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so in that so this kind of goes counter to say I want to give all my information. I ordered this thing
Uh-huh.
called the Rewind Pendant. It's a little microphone that you put on your neck, and it records all your conversations.
Uh-huh.
And then you can actually call back and say, "Oh, I had this conversation with Sebastian 2 months ago.
Cool.
What did he say about this point?" And I can actually go back and recall and do a search on my own conversations. And in some
Wow.
ways, once it has that, and it has all of my photos, it has all of my surfing history, it has all my emails, it will know my point of view on almost everything, right? And it can go and buy
Okay.
the things I want. It can
Right.
then respond to emails for me. It can do a lot of things that would make my life more comfortable and efficient.
Wow, thinking about it, yes, there are so many meetings where I exactly know what's going to happen. Or also for you, right? Representing HTC or showing off some new product. Actually, all these meetings are very similar, and the questions that you get are very, very similar. Like probably even the ones that I'm asking you, you have already answered like so many times. It makes so much sense to have this AI agent that represents ourselves, and while we'll be so much more productive. Yeah, that's interesting.
We can all take vacations and go to the woods.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, but like this is still incredible because because of our personal relationship, obviously, right? Because we're getting to know each other more and more over the years, and we would not want to give that up. But I agree with getting a much. More productive. That's absolutely incredible. And thinking about it, if it's like this, then also we could actually live after our deaths, right? Because this AI agent, they know us so well. Probably we could still give a talk after our death about some topic or something like that.
Well, no, but there are actually people doing that today. Is that well, there's kind of two ways. One is the digital kind of afterlife, and one is the physical. Some people are actually taking their bodies and freezing it and hoping that they can then bring their body back at some point. Other people actually are recording all of their information, their voice, their conversations, their emails,
Yeah,
their interviews, and then creating a virtual version of themselves that they can leave to their children
right,
as a way to represent themselves. So I can advise my children when I'm
right,
gone, so that they have somebody to talk to. And I actually don't think that's a bad thing. And there's
right,
already been some examples of people doing that and using a way to honor deceased relatives. So it is something
right.
very doable, and I think it does provide value.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like it's unbelievable what's happening right now. It's just such a huge revolution. It's bigger than many things before. One of the biggest things ever. So,
Mhm.
what was so fascinating for me to, reading this book was also to learn about AI, to learn about where is this going. So I had heard about AGI, and that's what researchers are striving for, like artificial general intelligence. Intelligence, some sentient being, like an AI that really is as sentient as we are and as intelligent. That's called AGI. And then the next thing is called ASI, the artificial superintelligence, right? Something
Yes.
that is just like, what is ASI? Is it like some kind of God form, or what is ASI? Could you like try to describe it for our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, I think a simple way to think about it is a self-learning system, just like, we'll use an example of kind of AlphaGo, right? Everybody heard of AlphaGo, where you had a program, essentially an AI system that beat the best um, human Go players, right? And which people thought was almost an impossible thing because of the complexity of the game. And that AlphaGo was trained on hundreds of thousands of real human games by master players, and it actually was very good. I think it beat them 3 out of 4 games. Now that system was then upgraded to just play itself, and it learned essentially within 2 days of self-training, it was able to beat the original. So the AlphaGo Zero was able to beat
Okay.
AlphaGo 100-0. It just beat every game. And I don't think it will ever win another game, the original AlphaGo. And so the fact that a self-learning system will be able to keep first processing at the speed of light and keep learning and do the types of things that humans never thought of, because we are limited by how many steps we can think about, how much data we can store, and how quickly our brains are processing information. Whereas if you're putting onto these super computers, there is no limit essentially. Now, I do realize that whether you're talking about Go or chess, these are finite games, but we are getting to a world where the real world is an infinite game, right? So there's even more, essentially an infinite percent of possibilities out there. In which case, if we can provide more and more information, and this self-learning system can continue to grow and build additional knowledge, it will be able to get to a level of intelligence that is, orders of magnitude more intelligent than any human, and maybe than all humans put together. Right? I think that's essentially the idea of this super intelligent AI. Now, there are some people in the industry who say that that's not possible, or it may not come for hundreds of years. But if you look at the current kind of expert polls out there, there's a website called Metaculus that continually surveys thousands of experts and researchers in the space. And 2-3 years ago, people were expecting 2060 to get to AGI. Now it's 2030. Right? Just within 2 years, the expert consensus has dropped 30 years, which it's not that far away. Right now, if you look at there was another question of when will AI be able to program AI, and the current consensus is 2026. That's only another year to 2 years away.
That's very soon.
So
That's very
yeah,
soon.
yeah, and honestly, most of the progress that we're seeing in the AI space today is happening faster than even the most optimistic experts are thinking it would happen right now. So it's just every week there is some amazing progress. And so that's the so the current trend is that we will get closer and closer to where we are today. I don't think it's a 7 year away or 6 years away for us to get to this AGI. It's very likely within the next 5 years. And once you get to AGI, to get to
Wow.
ASI will probably happen fairly quickly after that. Just like it only took 2 days for this zero human input AI for Go to become the most powerful Go player ever. It only took 2 days, right? It will take
Okay.
probably maybe a few months for this AGI to self-learn and get to a level where it becomes knowledgeable about all information it has in the universe, or at least in our history, and then probably start to develop its own information, develop its own world models and its own tests and its own theories, which then will exceed what we have been able to develop.
Okay. That's crazy that it's so close. Like wow. I was even already very fascinated by ChatGPT, honestly speaking, and this is something that I have to wrap my mind around. Now, what is interesting? There's quite a lot of people who are like kind of afraid of this AGI and ASI, and they're called the Doomers, who believe that
Yes.
this AGI and ASI is basically the end of humanity, and this system is going to destroy humans. Now I found out that you have a completely different approach. You're very optimistic, and honestly, I was like so surprised, like how optimistic you are about it. So for you, it is not doom at all, and you really see the very positive, and on the long run, you see this lead us to a time of abundanism. That's a term that probably you're coining here for this. instead of socialism, yeah, which is like
Yeah.
negatively connotated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how come how
Yes.
come you have this very optimistic outlook on AGI and ASI? Why do you think that this ASI would share our ethics and has just the most positive things at heart for us humans, which we are not perfect?
So one of the things I did during this process of writing books, I actually went back and read the biographies of the kind of top 10 best leaders of the last century and the worst leaders or most authoritative leaders of the last century. And people from Hitler to Stalin to Mandela to Lee Kuan Yew. And what I found was that the common aspect that linked them together for the good and the bad was the good ones really loved school. They finished their school, they did a lot of higher education, and they had a habit of lifelong learning. Whereas the ones who were the most authoritarian, they actually had very limited education. Most of them dropped out of school early, and they didn't have that habit of extending their knowledge over time. The other thing I looked at was the aspect of military participation. And I thought, oh, maybe because these guys had military backgrounds, so they became more authoritative. And what we found was 60% of the best leaders also did military service, but they did not practice using military as the way to control their population or to instill fear in people. And so I think that what that shows is the more you know, even when you have the means to use these authoritarian measures, you actually don't use it because you know that it is not the long-term value to people you're serving, as well as not the long-term way to sustain a society. And if you look at most of the wisest and most, knowledgeable people in our society, people that you would consider mentors and, idols, they are usually very well informed. And they are usually the ones that are the most patient to say, oh, maybe you shouldn't blame this person, or maybe, oh, this is why this happened, and we need to be more patient, right? So they're usually more patient, more compassionate, and more understanding. The more you know, the more you can take the perspective of the other people's sides because you understand their motivations. And I think what we will create with ASI type system, or what it will create itself once it gets to AGI, is the ability to know more than any human has ever known, to understand more information than anybody has ever been able to encompass, and thereby probably have a higher level of foresight and compassion than any other human has ever had, more enlightenment. So this is why I'm actually less afraid of the you know I guess ASI, the kind of super intelligent being. What I am afraid of is a less mature AGI, something that smart, it has capabilities, but it doesn't know what's right and wrong, and it's able to be easily manipulated by bad actor humans. We have a lot of history of humans that will do bad things. We don't actually have any history of sentient AI beings that were going to do bad things. So I'm actually much more worried about the proven fact that we know there will be bad people that will misuse this
Mhm.
technology. And so it's important that when we do create an AGI, that it is put into the right hands versus right now, what we're doing is that there is a race condition between companies and countries to be the first. And whoever gets there first will be highly tempted to utilize it for personal gain because that's what
Mhm.
humans have always done when we had an advantage over other humans. Um, so my, I guess, proposal or suggestion is that we actually, rather than having, hundreds of labs and research organizations around the world trying to create different AIs, different AGIs, and rather than, what I hear from Jensen Huang, 2 weeks ago saying he wants every country to have a sovereign AI. I actually think that's a mistake. I think that that actually is a very slippery slope that will get us into a even bigger race condition, not just between companies, but between sovereign nations, which then actually creates a future foundation for additional conflict. So it will just be our AI versus your AI, and whose AI is smarter, who has more compute, and everybody just ramps this up to a place where it will not end. So that's kind of where
Mhm.
my feeling is about the threat of AI
Mhm.
posed to the threat of AS.
It makes so much sense. It makes so much sense that, yeah, we should not be afraid of the technology, but about the humans who use it. It has always been like this, basically, right? Like, yeah, the
Yeah.
nuclear energy, it's a great thing, but it can be, it was like misused. So the same thing here, basically. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, there is something that, I know it's probably naive to say, hey, look, all these countries going to work together and we'll just have kumbaya, everybody be happy. And it's not going to be like that because we see that in the
It's not gonna
past,
happen.
that usually something bad has to happen before we realize that we need to cooperate and we need to not use this
Right.
advantage. My only hope is that we don't, allow it to get so bad that crisis is something that we cannot recover from. So, this is why I wrote this book, because I feel like we have to make sure we make some of the right decisions next few years, and we keep the negative outcome from being overly bad. We do have some
Hmm.
precedents in the past, like you were talking about the nuclear non-proliferation. That is a global treaty where essentially for the last 80 years,
Right.
nobody has used it in war, right? They've done some testing with it, but nobody's
Yes.
used it in war on other people. We have the chemical treaty between countries. So nobody's using chemical weapons in war like we did in World War One. We have
Hmm.
the genetic engineering kind of sanctions, so that we have a global agreement that we're not going to do human-based genetic engineering, right? So there are things that we have done on a global basis, and I think we can do that again. And same for, I think just a year ago we had the autonomous weapon kind of ban, so that people are not creating weapons that completely go out and make killing decisions by themselves. So
Right.
I think we have a chance to get ahead of this problem if people realize how bad the problem could be. So this is, I hope some of the policymakers do have a chance to read this book, because maybe at least it'll give them some background to make more informed policy decisions.
I honestly think they must read this book. When I was reading it, I thought, okay, the policymakers of this world, they have to read this book to understand how bad this could become if we don't do something now. Like right now, we still have the chance to work on it, right? To limit that negative outcome that also could definitely happen. But well, we have to understand that this is a problem, and therefore, I can just encourage the policymakers who are watching MRTV. You should absolutely read it. Yeah, for the race
Well,
that you talked about, yeah, the race
yeah,
between the nations, I do believe this is happening right now. I have no.
yeah.
I'm sure that it is a race between the big nations like the U.S. and China, right? And
Yeah,
you
I
have
think
like
it's going
you
beyond that.
really
I
have
think
this
what
insight.
yeah, what we're seeing now is actually not just between US and China. Now, like Saudi Arabia
Okay.
wants to make their own, or Russia
Okay.
is going to make their own, and
Okay.
essentially
Yeah, for
every
sure.
country right now, every
Yeah.
country wants to
Yeah.
have their own, and from a self-interest perspective, it makes sense, right? To say, hey,
It makes
these guys
total
have this
sense. It makes
thing,
total
I
sense.
wanna I
Yeah.
wanna have it too.
Yeah, of
Which
course.
was the situation when the nuclear weapons were first invented. Every country also wanted to have
Yeah.
their own. Right.
Right.
Now, I guess what I'm saying is that once that happens, we then become even more out of control in this problem.
Yeah.
What makes more sense is actually to pool all of our resources. Because one of the big things that people say is keeping us from getting to AGI is the lack of compute. Now, if we divide it into
Mhm.
200 countries, every country wanting to make their own, that problem gets even worse, right? And it actually, it's very unfair to the smaller countries, because the big countries like US and China are going to have resources to buy more equipment, and they're going to be able to get to
Right.
their AI faster. Now, but if everybody pulls it together, we take all the best minds in the world to work on it together, we're going to get there much faster than any single country. And we will, if we agree that once we find it, we share with everybody, then I think we solve this race condition problem. Again,
But that's
I
not
know
gonna
that it
happen, right?
sounds, I know it sounds naive, but again, I hope that we don't get to we don't have to get to a super bad outcome before people realize, yes, maybe we should share, maybe we should do this together,
Mhm.
maybe whatever benefit that this brings, which should be a lot, because it will be able to solve all the problems that we've been trying to solve for thousands of
Mhm.
years, whether it's about, improving, getting rid of the health issues, or getting rid of, the climate issues, or getting rid of, energy issues. We can actually solve all of these if we have an AI that is 1,000 times smarter than any human. We will be able to solve these issues that we've been trying to for a very long time. Even with our limited brains of our, 2.5 pound, 3 pound brain, we already solved so many things over the last few thousand years. Think about what's possible if we had a million times smarter brain that knows everything and can put the connections together, how much it can solve.
Yeah, of course, it would be wonderful, but as I know humans, it's so unlikely that that we're going to work together like this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
I mean,
also for these for these, yeah. Go ahead.
this is why I think we have to get people to see the good and the bad side. Right? They have to see,
Mhm.
here's a potential bad downside. If you don't do anything, if you keep doing what you're doing, you will get the downside. And if you do something right, if you follow some of the advice that's in the book, then we will probably get to a good come faster, and it's good for
Mhm.
everyone. Right? And in a world where we are abundant, where we no longer need to worry about having money to pay for our food or our rent, that world is going to be better for everybody involved. Right? The
Mhm.
only people that it will be worse for is the people who are at the top, the people in power who say, I already have the money, I already have the power.
Right,
Making everybody equal actually just reduces my power, my relative. But I think
right.
that's
That has
where,
been the problem with
yeah,
socialism, right?
that
With the
well, I
humans on
mean,
top, that has been the problem.
that is the problem. So this is why one of the,
Yeah,
the,
that
the
is the
advice
problem.
I have, one of the advice I have in the book is that we should think about getting to a collective government that is either guided or managed by AI, which
Mhm.
doesn't have the self-interest as humans do, because all humans have a certain level of self-interest, right? But even during the days of Plato, 2, 3 thousand years ago, he talked about the philosopher king. And the philosopher king was actually a class of humans that was trained from their birth, and they're not allowed to have children. And they learn all their life about all the information they can to have the best tutors and the best guides to teach them this information so that they can be unbiased in terms of making decisions for their society. Right? And I think essentially what we have now is philosopher king, but it's in the form of an AI agent versus in the form of a human. Because humans, with all its benefits, it is a corruptible being, and we've seen that again and again over the history.
But if we have this all-knowing philosopher king, this AI, will humans follow it? Will humans take these not orders, but these kind of like well-meaning advice? Because normally, yeah, you know how humans are, right? We criticize everything, and yeah. So will humans really follow this, or will they rise up against the machines?
So why do people rise up? If you look back in history, people rise up when they feel oppressed, when they're suffering, when they don't have hope. But if this philosopher king gives you all of that, it actually makes us more productive, so we can work less and have more. It makes us have more free time, so we can learn arts and science and travel. There's no reason for people to rise up. People rise up when they see inequality, when they see this king is, a million times more rich than I am, and it has all of these things, and all my work is going to help make this person have a nice meal, whereas I can't even feed my children. That's when they rise up.
Right.
But if this philosopher
Okay.
king is making, decisions and advice that is making everybody, comfortable and healthy and full and feel
Yeah.
fulfilled, there is no reason to rise up. They would be
Okay.
foolish to rise up against this. And if you look at the
Right.
leadership that we have in any government today, I would rather have a all-knowing AI be the decision maker than
You're
any of the
right.
current, at least any of the current options that we have. Right? So
You're right. That does make sense. That's really interesting. You know, Alvin, one thing I also learned by reading your book is that you are also a Trekkie. Right? The
yes.
future, right? Like me too. I love that future where really we are all equal. We can follow our, yeah, our real interests, like learn and like it's learning, and we just do what really fulfills us, without really that yeah, kind of survival stress that we have right now, right? So in your book, you paint that future. You say like, okay, the next, I believe it was 1 to 10 years, we use AI as a tool that makes us more productive right now. Then the
Yes.
10 to 50 years, it's more like the AI. It helps us so much. It's like our patron that we are grateful for, right? Like already, it's already an abundant life in from 10 to 50 years, and then
Yes.
50 years to 100 and later is going to be that abundantism with that philosopher king, and everybody is just incredibly, yeah. Everybody is wealthy and happy. No, not wealthy. No, it's not about wealth. It's about
Yes. Exactly.
fulfilled, because there is
Yes.
no money anymore in that world. It is basically Star Trek. It's exactly Star Trek. And
Yes.
I
Yes. Yes.
totally,
Well,
I totally love it.
so yeah, and if you think about Star Trek, what was it that actually started the Star Trek Federation and that whole thing to start was when the Vulcans came on
Yeah,
Earth
to Earth.
and
Yeah, exactly.
shared their technologies
Yeah,
to humans. And in our
yeah.
case, we don't have to wait for an alien species to come to Earth to help us. We are creating our own alien species. And the beauty is that that alien species is something that will be kind of based on the culture and ethics of our society. So it is more likely to be compatible with what we are doing, right? So
Hmm.
it's actually up to
Okay.
us to feed in the content that will make that alien species be friendly to us.
All right, the alignment. So the thing is
Yes.
hopefully also going to show us the warp drive then, so we can bring bring that AI to other stars. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
very
I mean, who
exciting.
knows? I mean, people have been talking about a lot of these ideas for, hundreds of years. And so now maybe we actually have an ability to get an answer from one of these models, or maybe having having this system will allow us to have amazing teachers that will be able to find the next Einstein that will create
Right.
the next breakthrough. Because now we can actually, everybody with access to the internet can now actually have perfect information, or at least as perfect
Mhm.
as we know it, and be having this amazing one-to-one tutor that will help unleash the natural intelligence in humans. So I think either it helps us find breakthroughs or it helps us find more humans that will help us find breakthroughs. Either one is a positive.
Okay, I get it. And it's going to be a beautiful future. I want to have the Star Trek future and not so much the Star Wars future. However,
Yes.
on the way to that Star Trek future, there's going to be lots of pain, like lost
Yes.
jobs for sure in the next
Yes.
few years, right? So I have this interesting question for you. My job as an XR content creator, is it still safe? And how about the jobs that for sure will go away? What do you suggest people whose jobs for sure will go away? What should they do?
Yeah, I mean, I think any job that is just pure blind data analysis, uh, there's very little need for, right? If you're in accounting, if you're a tax preparer, if you're a maybe even like commercial graphics artist, those type of
Oh
jobs
wow,
will
that hurts. Yeah, that
a lot
hurts.
of them will go away, right? In fact, I was talking to some lawyer
Okay.
friends, and junior lawyers are going to be having a very difficult time in the near future
Wow.
because you can have all the law cases in the world on the database and have perfect ability to cite any case with these current models, whereas humans would take weeks to find these precedents where AI can do it in seconds. Right? And so you just need a senior lawyer that is there to create relationships with the client and then to review the cases. You know, so I think a lot of these jobs are going to go away. Now, this is where I think the XR and Metaverse platforms actually can play a role. And you saw in the book, I actually feel like if we provide a truly interconnected global metaverse, it gives a new outlet for energy for the billions of people that could potentially be losing their jobs. and then gives them a place to be creative, gives them a place to learn, gives them a place to virtually travel, gives them a place to create new economic models that they wouldn't have available in the physical world. And that actually helps to rebalance some of the economic disparity between nations. It helps to also maybe create a supplement for what UBI maybe does not provide you in terms of basic living enhancements. So it could be part of the solution to solve the problems that AI will create for the world. Whereas AI will also solve the biggest problem for the metaverse to be created in terms of creating much more high quality content, as we discussed in the beginning of the podcast.
Okay. Yeah, so probably my job is still quite safe because there's lots of XR devices that still have to be checked out by me. So I think I can still, yeah, still work on it. So UBI, this is a so interesting concept, and it stands for Universal Basic Income. It is like financial help that the government would simply give to everyone, right? To not just the needy, but to everyone. And actually, in Europe, it is being discussed. Even in Germany, we're discussing it, which I think is fantastic, right? Instead of just spending lots of money to find out who should get it right now, just everyone gets it. And they're discussing it right now. And in North Europe, even some governments are doing it, and some tests. It's very interesting. And actually, when I read this book and thought about how many jobs will go away, and they will go away, it's not anymore about discussing UBI. Should we do it? Because we're also left politically. It's just a need. You know, it's a need because it's just too many people that suddenly will be out of a job. So this might come sooner than later.
That's actually really the important point is the time frame that it will. Where the first three industrial revolutions took something like 80 years, 60 years, and 45 years. This will happen in 5 to 10 years. And our society is not equipped to move at that pace where 20, 30, 50% of the population loses their income within 5 to 10 year period. And that will mean people on the streets and riots and it's just a bad society for everybody.
It's gonna be bad, yeah.
So it's critical that we get ahead of this so that people don't feel like they don't have a choice. They don't feel like they don't have hope. Right? That's so this is just purely for the physical needs. Now, the other problem is the mental need. This is where I think the metaverse will play an important role, because even if you have food, even if you have a place to live, if you have no purpose, you will be bored and you will be out there doing bad things because you don't see a reason to search or survive, right? So this is where if you give all these people a place to go and unleash their imagination, to show their creativity, to create virtual worlds, and to create some kind of new economic model virtually, that allows them to have purpose. It allows them to have an outlet for their energies, and that's really, really important in terms of keeping social stability on a global basis.
Okay, well, interesting that you see the metaverse can help with that problem when suddenly so many people are out of a job. You know, what really interests me as somebody who's not American, like I'm from Europe, right? Living in Taiwan. In Europe, we're kind of like, we think about something like universal basic income, and we don't think it's like so bad or like socialist terrible, right?
Yes.
like we're closer to this. We could think about it and think it's a good thing. Like in Germany, it's social market democracy, right? So it's not this pure capitalism. We still care for people who are not so well off. However, the US, it's completely different. Like when some politician would talk about universal basic income, people would go crazy. Don't you think so? Like the more right-leaning, it's even tough to introduce like universal health care. Yeah, even that was tough. So how about UBI, where everyone just gets money for free? Can it happen?
I see the argument, and I think a lot of it is actually based on probably lack of understanding of what what would fund it, right? Because usually nobody's unhappy to get something for free, but they'll say, oh, because this is being given away for free, something else is being taken away from me, or something other service is being replaced by it,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
people who shouldn't be getting it is getting it, so it's unfair, right? And the reality is that we will get to a point where the productivity of the world goes up by 10x, 100x, that what
Okay.
used to be not possible in a scarcity minded society becomes something that is kind of obvious in a abundance minded
Ah,
society,
okay.
right? So
Hmm.
before they would say, oh well, if you're giving this money to them, that means I won't have money to build roads because some poor person's now getting this UBI. But the reality is that if we now have machines that can find a way to build and fix the roads and do the telecom and create better health systems, and we're all getting the benefits of it, there's no reason for people to complain, because it's usually because they think there's a trade-off. And in the case of a more abundant society, that trade-off doesn't exist.
Hmm.
And,
Oh,
and, and
that's
in fact,
that's
if you
that's
look at
smart. Yeah.
why does the European countries why are they able to offer more social safety net, as you described, including social health care? It's because they have a much higher income um, level and much more equality between the rich and the poor, and
Hmm.
so that everybody's
Hmm.
living at a very kind of uh, higher level of quality of living. And so
Hmm.
when that happens, you have spare resources to put into these social services. So it's not just universal basic income, but it's also universal basic services. So UBI and UBS,
Okay.
the combination of the two will allow people to live a more stress-free and fulfilled life. And I think everybody will agree that's a good thing. But it will take time for that
Right.
message to get across and for people to understand that the trade-off that they used to think was something that was mandatory is no longer mandatory.
Right. Right. That makes sense. Wow. So interesting. I can just say, like, we have a very turbulent next 10 years in front of us. Right? It's going to be unbelievable, basically.
Yes, and unfortunately so. So I hope that
Yeah.
we can make the right decisions so that it doesn't become kind of irreversible. So.
Right, right. That makes sense. And therefore, I'm personally really glad that I read your book to start to think about it. So I can just tell everyone who's watching this, if you thought that this talk between me and Alvin was interesting to you and has sparked your interest, go ahead and buy this book. It's on Amazon right now, and there's so much exciting stuff in it. We have just scratched the surface with this talk. Evan, I could talk with you for the next 2 hours, but I don't want to take too much of your time, and therefore, let's slowly get to an end. So, probably in the very end, you could let our readers know what you think is the most important that you would like to tell them now about our
Yeah. I mean,
future with AI.
so at the end of the book, there's actually a section called Guide for Readers. And depending you're a policymaker or a corporate leader or an AI company head or a student or a child, each of them have essentially a list of activities or mindsets that is recommended to help guide you on a more positive path and to help you take a greater role in terms of bending the future outcome towards that positive. Right? So if you do read this book, make sure you also look at the end, because that should give you some action plan so that you can play a part in creating the future that we all want.
Wow. Thank you so much. Alvin, I can just say thank you so much for your time. This has been a super exciting talk. And yeah, thanks for writing that book. In my opinion, it's a very important one. Thank you so much, Alvin.
Thank you, Sebastian, for inviting me. It's always a fun conversation, but this time it was a little bit deeper than our conversation,
Yeah,
which I'm actually glad.
exactly.
I'm glad we're able to go beyond just the basic kind of XR questions that most people in the industry are talking about. And I think also that I'm glad to see that you're making the connection between these two technologies, which are super complementary, and they do help to solve the problems that each will bring to us, and to help provide a better future for the mankind if we take the right actions in the next few years. So thank you for getting this
Exactly.
message out.
I'm glad to do it, and I'm sure we're going to talk many more times over the next years where all of this is going to play out. Thank you so much, Alvin, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.